With 4.0 and Fontaine right at our doorsteps and Genshin having been around for 3 years, you might be needing a brief refresher on what's been happening in the story so far. This video will include everything that's happened in the main story, the state of each region before and after we've left them, as well as quests relevant to Genshin's upcoming Hydro region. Without further ado, here's everything you need to know about Genshin's stories so far, 4.0 edition. I'm your leafy Minsleif, and I read the Genshin Impact lore so you don't have to. Our story starts with our traveler trying to leave this world with their sibling but are blocked and separated by an entity known as the Sustainer of Heavenly Principles, or famously known as the Unknown God. Traveler is a literal alien who descended to this world with their sibling in the form of a falling star. After an undetermined set of years, Traveler wakes up in Mondstadt with a being known as Paimon offering to be their guide, teaching Traveler the language of Teyvat and providing some valuable information on how this world works. The 7 nations of Teyvat are all ruled by the 7 Archons, gods chosen by a divine hierarchy known as Celestia to rule over the lands and their respective elements. Visions are items used as conduits for elemental power. These visions are granted to a select few people in Teyvat by the gods, not necessarily the Archons. Traveler and Paimon encounter a massive green dragon, and this rings the start of the Mondstadt Archon quests. Mondstadt, also known as a City of Freedom, is a nation that worships the Anemo Archon, who although is relatively absent from the city, has an entire church and religion dedicated to him. The Knights of Favonius are an order that protects Mondstadt, with Jean as the acting Grandmaster. Grandmaster Varka is currently on an undisclosed expedition. Mondstadt is currently being tormented by a dragon named Storm Terror, who has unleashed violent windstorms in an attempt to destroy the city. The source of Storm Terror's power is tied to leyline disruptions happening in 4 temples spread across Mondstadt. Leylines are a network of elemental energy and memories, and disruptions within them in the most extreme cases can cause complete geographical and meteorological changes. The objective is to destroy Storm Terror's crystals in the temples to essentially cut off his power supply. The reason for Storm Terror's attacks is due to hatred in his heart. According to librarian Lisa, all that Traveler needs to know about the current state of things is found in this book, Breeze Amidst the Forest. In this book, we learn of Dvalin's valiant deeds during a global catastrophe that happened 500 years ago, known as the Cataclysm. When the Eclipse dynasty of Khvarena had fallen, a vengeful alchemist named Gold, in her own greed and ambition, had unleashed an army of shadowy creatures that wreaked havoc all over Teyvat. Durin, one of Gold's creations, was a wicked dragon who sought to destroy Mondstadt. The Anemo Archon and Dvalin rose up against Durin, where Dvalin had ended Durin's life with a fatal bite to the throat, in which Dvalin had inadvertently ingested Durin's poisonous blood. After the battle, Dvalin had fallen into a deep slumber. Centuries passed, and he finally woke up not long before Traveler's arrival. To his dismay, the people of the current time no longer remembered Dvalin as one of the protectors of Mondstadt, and cowered in fear, giving him the nickname Storm Terror. Betrayal, pain, and hatred that was further exacerbated by the poisonous blood clots Durin endured from his previous battle turned him into a vengeful dragon. After solving the matter at the temples and restoring Mondstadt's elemental flow to stop the windstorms, Traveler and Paimon run into Venti, a bard who claims he is the Anemo Archon and can use the famed Holy Lyre de Hermel to play music that would soothe and coax out Dvalin's gentle nature. This lyre gets stolen by a mage from the Fatui, a nefarious faction that hails from one of Teyvat's 7 regions, Shneznaya, the Cryo Nation. The organization's motive so far is to gain control of the Archon's powers by collecting Gnosis, a device used by the Archons to tap into the divine powers of Celestia. The party successfully retrieves the lyre from the Fatui with the help of Jean and Diluc, but not before hearing the agents warn them that Signora will end them. The group heads to Starsnatch Cliff to summon and purify Dvalin, but an Abyss Mage intercepts and Dvalin leaves. Poor Dvalin in his anguish was susceptible to the call of the Abyss Order, a mysterious and supposedly evil organization that seeks to destroy the 7 nations out of revenge for the fall of Khvarena, the kingdom that fell during the Cataclysm 500 years ago. The corrupted Dvalin seeks refuge in Storm Terror's lair. Traveler manages to purge Dvalin from his abyssal corruption, and Dvalin is finally freed from the Abyss Order's grasp. All's well that ends well in Mondstadt, or so it seems, until a Fatui harbinger named La Signora steals Venti's gnosis. Venti, weekend after this encounter, urges Traveler and Paimon to head to Liyue to speak to the Geo Archon. Once every year, he descends to the land during the Rite of Descension, a ceremony that is said to be happening very soon. Mondstadt is also the place we encountered the Wishful Drops event, which has one of the earliest mentions of Fontaine. The story follows a crisis in the Dawn Winery where the waters in the area have suddenly turned bitter. Mondstadt's main export is dandelion wine, so you can probably imagine the urgency. The bitterness of the water is due to Rodea the Oceanid, an elemental being in tune with water. An Oceanid's emotions can affect the quality of bodies of water. Pain and hatred in Rodea's heart have turned the Mondstadt waters bitter, because her heart longs for the previous Hydro Archon, and she harbors enmity towards Andorra, a fellow Oceanid whom she believes is an assassin sent to kill her. For the current state of Mondstadt, the situation with Dvalin has been resolved. The windstorms have disappeared and Dvalin is no longer a vengeful dragon. Mondstadt is more or less the same as it was prior to Dvalin's rampage. The Anemo Archon is still relatively absent, allowing people of Mondstadt to live in freedom, and things appear to be peaceful so far. The Fatui have 1 out of 7 gnosis. Next up, Liyue. Liyue is the Geo nation ruled by Morax, the god of contracts, colloquially known as Rex Lapis. It is considered the most prosperous nation in all of Teyvat, and it is also where Mora, the global currency of Teyvat, is minted by the Geonosis. Liyue is protected and governed by the Adepti, illuminated beasts and gods elected by Rex Lapis, and the Qixing, a committee made of 7 business leaders who implement the policies laid out by Rex Lapis. The Adepti and Qixing disagree with the way Liyue's affairs are being handled, with the Adepti believing humans to be too weak to fend for themselves and the Qixing believing they are self-sufficient without the Adepti. Every year, one of the Qixing is selected to perform the Rite of Descension, a ceremony in which the Geo Archon himself descends in dragon form to give his predictions on the business trends that will shape Liyue's economy for that year. This year, the Rite of Descension is being performed by Ningguang, the owner of the luxurious Jade Chamber. However, Rex Lapis descends dead, and Traveler, due to their proximity to the ceremony on top of being a foreigner, is ordered to be apprehended. They are rescued by a Hydrovision user named Tartaglia, one of the infamous Fatui harbingers. Tartaglia informs the Traveler that in order to clear their name of any accusations, they must win the favor of the Adepti, all of which attest the Traveler's innocence in Rex Lapis's death. At this time, the Liyue Qixing are refusing to let anyone near Rex Lapis's body. Zhongli is a consultant of the Wangsheng funeral parlor, whose job it is to give Rex Lapis a proper burial. Traveler is tasked with assisting Zhongli in procuring special items for this funeral ceremony known as the Rite of Parting. Ningguang later invites Traveler to the Jade Chamber to inform them of several concerns. With the death of Rex Lapis, a restructuring of the US government is necessary, and that restructuring might involve the Adepti no longer having jurisdiction over Liyue. The Fatui might be to blame for these rumors of reorganization happening, causing fear and panic in the Liyue citizens, and Ningguang is extremely aware of the Fatui's desire to recover Rex Lapis's body. Amidst all the uncertainty and chaos in Liyue Harbor, Traveler realizes that Tartaglia might be looking for the Geonosis. The Geonosis is surprisingly missing from Rex Lapis's body, and a battle ensues. Tartaglia believes that the body was a diversion and that the Geo Archon is still alive. In an attempt to force the Geo Archon to show himself and surrender the Geonosis, Tartaglia summons Osial, an ancient god that had tormented Liyue in the past. At this point, the Liyue Qixing and the Adepti put their differences aside to face this common enemy, and ultimately Ningguang is forced to drop the Jade Chamber on Osial to seal him once and for all. Traveler seeks out Zhongli and is surprised to find him with La Signora and Tartaglia. Zhongli reveals himself to be the Geo Archon Rex Lapis, and the one behind the series of events including faking his death. All of this was done to test Liyue in hopes the nation could thrive without an Archon's rule. He allegedly forged a contract to end all contracts with the Cryo Archon, the leader of the Fatui, and willingly surrenders his gnosis to the Harbingers. Zhongli insists that Traveler and Paimon should head over to Inazuma, as news of his death will cause the Electro Archon to move forward with her plans. But before that, we take a quick trip back to Mondstadt to investigate a stranger named Dainsleif, at the request of Khvarena and the Adventurers Guild. Dainsleif apparently only accepts Adventurers Guild commissions that are related to the nefarious Abyss Order, the faction responsible for Dvalin's momentary rampage. The trio follow the trail of a supposed Abyss Herald. They are unsuccessful, but it is in this quest that we learn two important things about Dainsleif. He had a traveling companion, and he's been alive for at least 500 years. The trio part ways in Mondstadt, and Traveler and Paimon head back to Liyue Harbor to investigate Abyss Order activity in the ruins nearby. To their surprise, they find a human sacrifice and a defiled statue, a statue of the animal Archon turned upside down and emanating dark energy. They narrowly escape an Abyss Herald and encounter Dainsleif just outside the ruins. Dainsleif joins in on their commission, and the trio uncover an Abyss Order plot to revive Osial and turn him into a mecha god, using a defiled statue in something called the Eye of the First Field Tiller. This Eye of the First Field Tiller turns out to be a part from the first Ruin Guard ever created, a prototype that was far stronger than the Ruin Guards created after. Dainsleif decides to keep the Eye of the First Field Tiller, not trusting anyone but himself and keeping it safe. The trio return to the ruins in Liyue to destroy the defiled statue and halt the Abyss Order in their tracks. They are intercepted by an Abyss Herald and by none other than the Traveler's sibling, who reveals themselves to be the prince or princess of the Abyss Order. The sibling reveals that Dainsleif was a Twilight Sword, a royal guard of Khvarena who failed to protect the nation from disaster 500 years ago. As a result, he was cursed with immortality and has been alive since the Cataclysm. They also reveal themselves to have been Dainsleif's traveling companion many years ago. Traveler's sibling also insists that they have a war with destiny and that our Traveler will see the truth of this world once they finish their journey, a series of travels that our sibling has already completed. The Abyss Herald summons a portal that the sibling leaves through with Dainsleif in pursuit. Paimon tries to cheer up Traveler and insists they go to Inazuma for answers. The defiled statue remains undestroyed. Here is a state of Liyue after the Archon quests. Mora was solely being minted by the Geonosis. Now that Zhongli had surrendered the Gnosis to the Tsaritsa, no new Mora is currently being minted due to him not having an alternative plan for his resignation as an Archon. A major issue from a financial standpoint according to Zhongli. The Qixing now operates solely as the decision makers behind the US policies and regulations, with the Adepti stepping back to allow humans a chance to prove and fend for themselves. Ningguang later rebuilds the Jade Chamber. During the interlude chapter, the crane returns on the wind. The defiled statue from the We Will Be Reunited Archon quest remains intact as Traveler and Paimon still haven't destroyed it. Dainsleif is still in possession of the Eye of the First Field Tiller, a powerful mechanism developed by Khvarena. The Fatui have 2 out of 7 Gnosis. Now on to the next step of our journey, Inazuma. Inazuma is ruled by A, the Electro Archon, with the Raiden Shogun, a stoic puppet, being used as her mortal vessel. The country is in a state of isolationism due to the Sakoku Decree, with violent thunderstorms around the region making sea travel nearly impossible. There is also the Vision Hunt Decree, in effect to confiscate all visions. Those who disobey and withhold their visions would be punished severely. Due to diplomatic immunity, the Fatui are able to freely enter the country. Inazuma is also led by the Tri-Commission, 3 organizations who oversee various matters. The Kanjo and Tenryu Commissions are responsible for enforcing the Sakoku Decree and Vision Hunt Decree. Inazuma is also in the middle of a civil war waged against the Shogun by the Sangonomiya clan. The resistance group and the Shogun's forces are at a standstill at Yashiori Island. Traveler and Paimon get to Inazuma safely with the expertise of Beidou and Kazuha and are greeted by Toma, a trusted business partner who agrees to aid them in meeting the Raiden Shogun. Toma introduces the pair to his employer, the Kamisato clan's princess, Kamisato Ayaka, who after hearing Traveler's deeds in Mondstadt and Liyue is hoping they'd aid her in abolishing the Vision Hunt Decree. Those who have lost their visions due to the decree experience severe bouts of memory loss, mood swings, and depression, almost losing a part of themselves in the process. With Ayaka's charm, Traveler finally agrees to help abolish the decree, and soon after, Toma is apprehended by the Tenryu Commission. The Raiden Shogun herself makes an appearance to remove Toma's vision from him, and the ceremony is interrupted by the Traveler. Overwhelmed by her power, Traveler, Toma, and Paimon flee the scene, and Toma insists that Traveler gets in contact with the resistance group at Watatsumi for safety. In Watatsumi Island, Traveler and Paimon pledge their allegiance with the resistance group, and shortly after, the Shogun's forces arrive. Kujo Sara, leader of the Tenryu Commission forces, offers a momentary ceasefire in exchange for Traveler, something that Resistance General Goro refuses, and a battle ensues. Resistance leader Sangonomiya Kokomi arrives and the battle is won for now as the Shogun's forces retreat. There's a problem, however. The resistance group has been desperate for supplies and have accepted help from the Fatui unbeknownst to them. The Fatui had been supplying delusions to the resistance army, a dangerous mechanism developed by the Fatui to imitate visions. The use of a delusion severely depletes the life force of its wearer, the consequence of which kills resistance soldier Teppei. Traveler wants revenge, and they head to the delusion factory to destroy it, but are quickly subdued by Fatui Harbinger Scaramouche. Before Traveler passes out, they are rescued by Yae Miko, the head of the Narukami Shrine, owner of the Yae publishing house, and the Raiden Shogun's familiar. Yae Miko coerces Kujo Sara to side with the resistance by enlightening her to the Fatui's involvement in the Vision Hunt decree. It was the Fatui's attempt to destabilize Inazuma and create a market for their delusions. They had bribed both the Tenryu and Kanjo Commission, and it is the reason why the Fatui are free to enter and leave Inazuma. Kujo Sara finally agrees to aid the resistance given the surmounting evidence of Fatui trickery at play. Traveler encounters both La Signora and the Raiden Shogun at Tenchukaku. La Signora feigns innocence and a duel is arranged in which La Signora loses and is slain by the Muso no Hitotachi. A reveals that she allowed the Vision Hunt decree to persist as it posed no threat to her ideals of eternity. A place she believes is where everything is kept the same. Traveler challenges her to a duel to abolish the Vision Hunt decree, and with the aid of Yae Miko via a protection charm, A loses the duel and the Vision Hunt decree has come to an end. Paimon is relieved that the Fatui failed to get their hands on another Gnosis, having already acquired 2 out of 7 at this point. But Yae Miko reveals that in exchange for Traveler's life and safety back at the Delusion Factory, she'd given Fatui Harbinger Scaramouche the Electro Gnosis, something she'd been keeping safe for A as the Electro Archon had cut off all ties with Celestia. Yae Miko advises that Traveler and Paimon travel to Sumeru, and this is where the Inazuma Archon quests end. This is the state of Inazuma after the Archon quests. The Vision Hunt decree is abolished and visions are returned to their rightful owners. The Sakoku decree is lifted much later during Act 2 of the Raiden Shogun's story quest, causing an influx of visitors and trade to the country. Both the Kanjo and Tenryu commissioners are arrested for their involvement with the Fatui. Fatui forces retreat from Inazuma while some stay behind to supposedly avenge La Signora. A later finds a new resolve as a shogun and she begins to play a more active role in Inazuma's policies. Inazuma seems to be moving towards a more progressive future post-Archon quests. The Fatui have 3 out of 7 Gnosis. Before heading to Sumeru, the next Archon quest takes place in the Chasm. Traveler and Paimon investigate a strange occurrence in which Hilichurls are mindlessly wandering into the chasm, only to disappear without a trace. The pair run into Dainsleif, who after the events of the We Will Be Reunited Archon quest was transported to Stormterror's lair immediately after trying to follow Traveler's sibling and the Herald. There are a couple important takeaways from this Archon quest. When the cataclysm happened in Conria, soldiers and civilians alike were transformed into monsters seemingly due to the cruelty of Celestia. This curse inflicts pain and Hilichurls have come to the chasm to die as the environment in the chasm seems to weaken the curse just for a bit for their final moments. These Hilichurls used to be humans, and Dainsleif believed that once people turn into monsters they lose all semblance of their humanity, something that was immediately disproven by Halfdan, a guard-turned-monster who had remembered and obeyed Dainsleif's command from 500 years ago to protect the people of Conria. Before heading to Sumeru, we are introduced to events that tell us a little bit of Fontaine and its current problems. Fontaine has a waterline crisis which may imply that the nation is sinking. It also has an energy problem in which the city's current energy source is dwindling, with engineers all over the country working to resolve this energy crisis. Chapter 3 of Teyvat's story takes place in Sumeru, led by Dendro Archon Lesser Lord Kusanali, the god of wisdom. Sumeru Academia, Teyvat's largest known academic center, is located in the main city. The Machar are disciplinary officers for Sumeru Academia and enforce the Academia's integrity. The Eremites are a loosely organized mercenary corps in the deserts of Sumeru that accept commissions from various organizations depending on the pay. The Academia is currently Sumeru's main governing body. Knowledge is managed as a resource through a device known as the Akasha System, which was invented by the previous Dendro Archon Greater Lord Rukkhadevata and is currently being powered by the Dendronosis. The people of Sumeru are connected to all the information in the Akasha System via devices known as the Akasha Terminals. The consequence of using the devices have caused the people of Sumeru to stop dreaming. The Akasha System is regulated by the Academia, which bans information that comes from outside sources. The sages of the Academia have become more radical in their belief that the arts are meaningless. The Academia sages have also rejected the current Dendro Archon Kusanali in favor of the former. As a result, Kusanali lives in seclusion and has very little control over the affairs of Sumeru. Those with faith in Kusanali are very few, and this development has furthered the corruption of the Academia, with the sages having all the jurisdiction and nothing to stop them so far. There's strife between the desert folk and forest folk of Sumeru as they believe their respective deceased gods to have been the true rulers of Sumeru, King Deshret versus Greater Lord Rukkhadevata. Sumeru is affected by the Withering, corruption that happened after a ruler named King Deshret introduced forbidden knowledge to his people. Forbidden knowledge is a type of wisdom that comes from outside of Teyvat. The Withering causes areas of the land to rapidly deteriorate and decay, and the effect on humans is a disease known as Elazar, whose symptoms include the hardening of one's skin until fatigue, nerve damage, and necrosis occurs, causing permanent immobility. Upon entering Sumeru, traveler experiences a hallucination via an incense known as Spirit Borneal. This hallucination causes them to see a white tree, later known as the Irminsul. While passed out, they are rescued by forest rangers Kale and Tugnity, who help them get to Sumeru City to try to see the Dendro Archon. Traveler and Paimon are given Akasha Terminals and are helped by Dunyarzad and her guardian Dihya. Dunyarzad is a rare follower of Kusanali and has volunteered to organize this year's Subsidus Festival, a celebration dedicated to Kusanali's birthday. Dunyarzad and dancer Nilou are excited for the preparation of the Subsidus Festival. The festival is however shut down by the grand sage of the Academia, Azar. The day ends with an ominous beep with an unknown voice stating that the project has just begun. The Mass Stream Harvest Scheme. With the help of a girl named Nahida, who later reveals herself to be the Dendro Archon Kusanali, Traveler and Paimon realize they are trapped in a samsara, a constant loop of the day of the Subsidus Festival, which we later learn is actually Nilou's dream. The Akasha Terminal was being used by the Academia to farm the dreams of the people of Sumeru. The process works by separating one's consciousness and placing it into a host dream. The now vacant dream gets harvested at the end of every cycle. But why dreams? Kusanali notes that dreams are rich bundles of human wisdom since the mind is most active when dreaming. However, this constant state of dreaming causes fatigue. Dunyarzad becomes Dunyarzad, but Kusanali is able to preserve a fragment of her consciousness to keep her alive in the real world. Traveler wakes up Nilou, the samsara finally ends, and we later learn that the Fatui may have had a hand in... The Mass Stream Harvest Scheme was an experiment helmed by Fatui Harbinger Il Dottore in order to provide the Academia with a new god superior to Nahida, with the vessel for it being fellow Harbinger, Scaramouche, who was in possession of the Electronosis from Inazuma. Nahida and Traveler defeat the newly born god Scaramouche, and Nahida removes the Electronosis power in his new form. Scaramouche is taken into Nahida's custody and recovers in a secret location in the meantime. Using both the Dendro and Electronosis, Nahida and the Traveler access the previous Dendro Archon's final memory for her wisdom. They are taken back to the vision the Traveler had first seen upon entering Sumeru, the Irminsul tree, which we learn is a database of all the information and memories in Teyvat. The previous Dendro Archon Rukkhadevata had created Nahida as a branch from this tree to serve as her next reincarnation. During the Cataclysm, Rukkhadevata was tasked with protecting the Irminsul from abyssal corruption and Khaenri'ah's use of forbidden knowledge, the very thing that destroyed King Deshret's civilization. This corruption, or the Withering, had affected Rukkhadevata and by extension the Irminsul, and the only way to clear the corruption is for Nahida to remove all traces of Rukkhadevata's existence. Once all traces of Rukkhadevata disappears from this world, the Irminsul is restored, and the Withering completely goes away, meaning all people suffering from Elazar are finally cured. Only Traveler remembers Rukkhadevata as they are not part of this world, and changes to the Irminsul only affect people that are of Teyvat. The Irminsul, however, contains records of the Traveler's sibling, but anything after the end of their journey is fuzzy due to someone intentionally withholding information about the sibling's fate. Ildatore negotiates with Nahida for the Dendro and Electro-Gnosis, the exchange of which involves Ildatore destroying segments or copies of himself and information regarding the truth of this world, with the stars and skies being a lie. With the Fatui now in possession of 4 out of 7 Gnosis, Nahida urges Traveler to head to Fontaine. Here's the state of Sumeru after the Archon quests. The former Grand Sage of the Academia and his accomplices are exiled to Avidia Forest. Alhaitham was appointed as the acting Grand Sage of the Academia momentarily. He later resigns, leaving the Academia with no leader at the moment. Nahida is worshipped and believed to be the only Dendro Archon, as no one has memories of Greater Lord Rukkhadevata. She now oversees all matters and affairs in the Dendro nation. The Akasha system was shut down as a result of it no longer being powered by the Dendro Gnosis, and as a result, the people of Sumeru can experience dreams again. The withering no longer persists in Sumeru, meaning withering zones and Elazar should no longer exist. Sumeru is in a much better state than when we originally entered it. Scaramouche comes back into existence as the Wanderer after removing his prior existence from the Irminsul. The Fatui Harbingers have an empty 6th spot that's been vacant for years, as Scaramouche technically never existed. The Fatui have collected 4 out of 7 Gnosis. There's a brief Archon quest that takes place just prior to Fontaine. The Caribert Archon quest is our siblings' memory and is a prologue to their origin story as the Abyss orders Prince or Princess. Khvarena of Good and Evil so far is my favorite world quest in all of Genshin, and in it we learn some incredible information pertinent to Fontaine and its former Hydro Archon. Traveler and Paimon meet Sorush, a floating being whose purpose is to erase the sign of Apausha, a celestial sign from the cataclysm that reflects the abyss and corrupts the land around it. Only Sorush and the Great Songs can purify the sign of Apausha. A sage named Nasajuna leads us to the Great Songs, some of which are located inside Khaenri'ah ruins. Nasajuna later betrays Traveler and Paimon and reveals himself to be an agent of the Abyss, and after obtaining all the Great Songs, we learn that the god of Sorush's species is a divine tree that acts as a seal absorbing abyssal defilement. This tree was actually the previous Hydro Archon, the Lord of Amrita. The Lockfolk were her dutiful spies sent across the waters of Tevat to connect the people of the world together. The Lord of Amrita was one of the Archons called to Tunigi Hollow to combat the Abyss, but was slain. Her body was turned into pure dew from which the previous Dendro Archon, Greater Lord Rukkhadevata, grew a massive tree called the Harvestocum to keep Lord Amrita's conscience alive in the mortal realm. The Harvestocum has kept abyssal forces trapped for years. After Lord Amrita's death, Focalor came to power as the new Hydro Archon, a development that was vehemently rejected by the Lockfolk. We learn in the 3.8 Secret Summer Paradise event that the Oceanids have also fled due to Fontaine's waters being toxic, following the rise of Focalor as a new Hydro Archon. The Fontaine Archon quest we'll be experiencing upon 4.0's release are Chapter 4 Act 1 and Act 2. We are told of a prophecy that indicates that Fontaine will possibly be flooded, and on top of that, Lyney and Lynette are investigating the truth behind the Oratrice, a machine which generates power for the entire city. This machine works by collecting people's belief in justice via the trials at the court of Fontaine. It is also said to be conscious, alive. To find out more about what we know about Fontaine so far, feel free to check out my full-length video and analysis in my previous upload. This is what we know about the current state of Fontaine. Fontaine's Hydro Archon is seemingly juvenile and finds entertainment out of the drama in the courtroom. It's not the best place to live for people who fail to abide by the country's harsh laws, as those who are deemed guilty of their crimes are ostracized from society and essentially forced to live underground. Although seemingly affluent, the main city is facing a waterline crisis and an energy crisis. The Fontaine Institute of Kinetic Engineering is the hub of all the country's technological advances, and most of its buildings have been destroyed due to an accident in the recent past. The Institute is in the process of rebuilding and restructuring itself. This video was a summary of the main story so far in Genshin Impact. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and a follow, and I'll see you on the next video. I'm your leify Minsleif, and I read the Genshin Impact lores that you don't have to.